Hey there, welcome to the Mile High Church podcast. I want to let you know that we will be hosting Greg Braden with his webinar, Deep Human, The Power to Thrive in Our World of Extremes, on October 23rd and 24th. Check it out at milehighchurch.org. And now part 1 of Adventure in Faith 2020, Cultivating Certain Faith in Uncertain Times, with Josh Reeves and Michelle Medrano.
Good morning and welcome to our Adventures in Faith 2020, Cultivating Certain Faith in Uncertain Times. There's some people who've worked really hard to put this together, so I want to begin by acknowledging our Adventures in Faith committee. I want to acknowledge Sylvia Castillo, Larry Cattell, Linda Rangel, Sarah Shin, Diane Short, who did our reading today, Lindsay Porticazo, and our own Dr. Michelle Medrano. I don't think I'm forgetting anybody, am I? And I also want to just thank Ava Thimke, one of our graphic designers, for the great looks, and Lana Fujimoto, who is here today as well, for working so hard to design and put together our small group materials that you can find online. So grateful for all of them, and so grateful for you for joining us on this year's adventure. I don't know about you, but it seems as the years go on that there's more and more stuff that you can't not leave your house without. You know what I mean? There's your keys, your wallet, your cell phone. God forbid we forget our cell phones. And now it's our masks. You know, I don't know about you, but I actually caught myself last week, and maybe you have too. Hey, is that a new mask you're wearing? Gosh, where'd you get that? You look fabulous. You know, we find a way to adjust. But you know, something that we human beings have been doing from the beginning of time, and that I would say that you and I do every day when we leave the home and when we enter it, is we take our faith with us. Whenever I leave the house, whether I'm conscious of it or not, I'm telling the universe, how much confidence do I have in myself today? How much confidence do I have in the path of my life today? How much faith do I have in my country, in my community? How much faith do I have in God? And those answers, again, conscious or not, we believe in our teaching, set the creative foundation for our lives. And so this Adventures in Faith is all about checking in with ourselves, realizing that faith is best measured not in times of comfort and going with the flow, but in times of challenge that demands a certain amount of authenticity, faith, and courage. You know, a few things I've learned during these challenging times. One, in this crisis, there is opportunity. Whatever challenge you may be facing isn't a call to stop. It's a call to reinvent, to recreate, to bring forth what is within you to help overcome anything that may be going on around you. Second, in this grief, there is grace. In this grief, there is grace. Dr. Michelle and all of us ministers, all of our church, we've had the honor of getting to be there for people who have struggled through these times, be it because of COVID or COVID-related events. And it's sad, and it's hard. And yet at the same time, what I know is within all of that, for all of us, there are these glimpses of grace, these little reminders that God is with us. Something I've gotten from faith, something I've gotten from a spiritual practice, is that sometimes I can look around me and say, you know, things aren't okay, but I'm okay. Things may not be okay, but I'm okay. It may seem like craziness going on all around me, but you know what? I'm clear. I know who I am. And a third lesson that I've learned is that in this uncertainty, there is faith. In this uncertainty, there is faith. Certainty by itself, to me, is not a virtue. It's probably more like a defense mechanism. It's something that we use or convince ourselves of to keep ourselves from realizing that every day is a mystery, that we're surrounded by the unknown. A certain faith in uncertain times is different. It's the recognition that I can stand and walk through life not knowing, but with the knowledge that there is a spirit greater than I am within me and all around me and in and around everyone. And if we can believe in this spirit more than anything that the conditions of life around us or the news or whatever may be going on may try to inform us of, we can know that there's nothing stronger to help lead us through these uncertain times. And so this adventure of faith, we're going to be looking at our faith in a lot of different areas. Today's message is recommitting our spirit and looking at our relationship with God. We'll be looking at our support systems in our lives. We'll take a fresh look at our dreams and our aspirations. We'll look at what is mine to do in a shaping culture around us. And we'll look at restoring our hope in God, in humanity, in all that it is. On this topic of recommitting our spirit, the great Catholic author Walker Percy asked the question, suppose you were to ask God for a miracle, and God said, sure, very well. How would you live your life differently? Suppose you were to ask God for a miracle, and God said, yeah, sure. How would you live your life differently? Would you have greater faith in a God that can perform miracles in your life? Would you have a greater understanding that there is a presence of unconditional love in, through, and around you always? Would you have the greater realization that you are one with that creative power that made the moon and the stars and the galaxies, and that very creative power is available for you to co-create your life with God today? There's an old proverb. It's unsourced, but I think it traces back to Africa. And it says that our job is to give our children two things. The first is roots, and the second is wings. I like that not just for our kids, but for all of ourselves. We need roots. We want to be grounded to Mother Earth. We want to be safe in our own skin and bones. We want to have the discernment and clarity to help steer us through the challenges of life. And yet also, we need wings. We need that power and that faith that can help us transcend anything that appears to be, knowing that what is within us is always greater than anything going on around us. And when we can bring those two realities, the inner and the outer, together, we grow those wings that helps us fly above the challenges to not get buried beneath them. When I consider the question, if I were to ask God for a miracle and God said, sure, Josh, how would I live my life differently? I initially go back to being a teenage boy when someone would say, hey, if you could ask the genie for a wish, what would it be? And the smart answer was always 1,000,000 wishes, because then you could keep going. So my first thought is I'd ask God for a lot more miracles. But when I really think about it and take it to heart, I realize that the miracle isn't that which I've asked for. The miracle is God herself. The miracle is knowing there is a God. The miracle is the experience of divinity that enters our hearts when we acknowledge that we are not the only power in our lives. That there is a divine presence in, through, and around us, and yet it's up to us to say yes to that miracle, unfolding in, through, and around us. Too many of us, we settle and allow God to be a theory in our lives, missing out on the experience of God. And I get paid to talk about God, so I want to keep talking about God, but sometimes I think God should be like Fight Club. The first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. The first rule of spirituality might be don't talk about it, because the more sometimes we get caught up in what we think God is, in the theories, and they're great sometimes because they can inspire authentic experiences of the divine, but realize the moment that we put divinity in a box, we're limiting our experience of that divinity. I'm all for worshiping the God of your own understanding, but I'm about worshiping the God that's beyond my understanding. That divinity that is present if we are courageous enough to realize that, yes, indeed, this life is a mystery. And yes, indeed, God is a mystery, but it's a glorious one that calls us into deeper faith, deeper trust, deeper knowingness, to realize that to really live step by step with the divine is to practice living in that mystery and opening our hearts to how the divine might show up and evolve in us every day. I remember early in my ministry giving a sermon. I was done, and there was another minister there, and he decided to give me a little bit of feedback, which was a little difficult because, to be honest, I didn't like this minister a whole lot. And the feedback this person gave to me said, Josh, I really liked your talk today, but I can't get how God speaks to you in your own heart. How does God speak to you in your own heart? And I was angry, and I fought with it for a while, and I had to listen and realize, it may have been God speaking through this person to me, because I could see that I had a love of divinity, and I had a love for the miracle of life, and I could see it going on for everyone else. And I loved creating spaces for that to happen, but I had not yet done enough work to allow that miracle to be born in my own heart, to see it in my own life. And so I had to begin the work of renewing my own faith in God, to realize, indeed, that when I let this divine presence into my heart and into my life, a divine story begins to unfold, a story that can be greater than any of us can imagine. And I'm grateful to say that I'm living that story today. And I'm so grateful that I haven't missed out on so many of the opportunities that the divine gives us to show up in our lives. I want to do something a little unorthodox this morning, and I actually want to challenge your God. I actually want to challenge your faith this morning, respectfully, I hope. And the first thing I want to ask is your God boring? Is your God boring? See, our relationship with God can be like any human relationship. It can be like going out and meeting who you think is Mr. Wonderful, and you talk and you listen to each other, and you talk about plans for your life, and you make plans together, and then he moves in, and a week later it seems like all he cares about is watching reruns of Law and Order on the couch. Our God can get like that too. But in a spiritual relationship, it's not about seeing what is this person to make themselves that way. I like to think that it's up to us to call forth God into our life. To call God forth. To not say to ourselves, oh, God's too busy to perform a miracle in my life. But to be able to say, God, I expect you to perform miracles in my life. You hold me to account, I'll hold you to account. We want to be able to speak to our God and say, be that presence of unconditional love in my life. And all God asks for in return is that we believe it, is that we live like it, that we practice that unconditional love that we know is the most creative power there is in the universe. If our God seems so compartmentalized that it's like a piece of pie in the pie chart of our lives, we've missed out on what God is. The divine can be the center of everything in our lives, but we have to let it. We have to practice cultivating that faith that says, yes, I believe in a God that can perform miracles in my life. Yes, I believe in a presence of unconditional love around me and available to everyone. Yes, I believe that I co-create my life with a divine power that knows who I am and why I am here. Yes. Second question. Is your God capable of confronting the challenges in your life? Is your God capable of confronting the challenges in your life? And I think the answer for many people is no. Some people, believe it or not, have given up on God. This sounds like a crazy theory. It doesn't seem to be working. So we've got to get back to our lives and realize that a divine presence is there. That as icky or as messy or as off as things seem, that's not about God making bad things happen. That's about God calling forth itself in each one of us to bring forth the light and the good and the love that's being called for. Karen Mason Miller is a great Buddhist author, and she wrote a book several years ago I really enjoyed called Paradise in Plain Sight, Lessons from a Zen Garden. Her and her husband, they buy a home, and it has this beautiful Zen garden, ponds, and all this stuff in the backyard, and it quickly becomes a metaphor for life itself. She shares, sometimes people come to the garden and say, it's so much smaller than I thought, or it's so much bigger than I thought, or it's not at all what I thought. They have created a picture in their minds of what the garden looks like, or what it should look like. And when they see the real thing, they aren't seeing it at all, but comparing it to a picture in their minds. Don't we sometimes see life that way? How we think it looks as opposed to as it really looks? Through the lens of a cable news channel instead of the lens of our hearts? Through fear or worry as opposed to from a viewpoint of wholeness? Miller goes on, sometimes people come to the garden and they say, I had no idea. Then they don't say anything else because they are seeing the garden. They are seeing what is right in front of them and experiencing it. Then nothing needs to be said. I'm not inviting you today to believe in a God you don't really believe in. I'm just asking you to look at your life, to see it outside of an outdated or someone else's perspective, to see it as it is and to listen to it. That is where we ignite a new and profound relationship with divinity. Miller struggles with her garden. The ponds are a mess. They're murky and muddy, and it all looks ugly. Anyone look at the world and see something like that for themselves these days? So what she does is she hires an expert in Japanese gardens who comes to survey the property, and he spends hours there, and finally he approaches the couple and shares with them, this is the most perfect example of a naturally purified pond I've ever seen. Then he showed us the hidden elegance in the whole rotten mess. The large surface area supplied ample oxygen. The stream and waterfalls were natural filters. The mud balanced the water's chemistry, keeping plants and fish alive. He didn't do anything that day except give us the right view of the water. It isn't always pretty, but it's beautiful. We never needed to call him again. I had to do my own work this week on sharing this idea with you all. But is it possible that the main thing that your life needs right now is a clear way of seeing it, is a clearer vision, a way of seeing life from a perspective of divinity as opposed to from a vision of complacity, of feeling less than, of not having hope or faith in humanity or in the divine around you. Yes, it may be a rotten mess, but God is at work in your life. The divine is at work in my life. And I may stumble, but I commit to you today and invite you to commit as well to see your life from a consciousness of wholeness. Because it's not that it's not there. We have to do that work not only to see it, but then to cultivate it. And I hate to think of the consequences if we don't. Recommitting our spirit means knowing God is with us, God is for us, and yes, God is as us, in everyone. One last question of your God, and that is your God in the closet? No, that's not what I mean. It's a different sermon. But do you keep your God secret? Jesus talked about praying in our closets. There's something to be said for not proselytizing or trying to convert people to your point of view of God. I get all that. But are you sure you're not ashamed in some way or embarrassed to believe in a divine presence, that you hide it, that you don't want to offend anybody so you don't talk about it? What I know for each and every one of you who practice these principles is that people in your life notice. There's something different about you. There's something, I can't put my finger on what it is, but they emote a kind of virtue, a kind of confidence, a kind of trust. I want that for myself. And so it's our charge to not be afraid to talk about our God. Don't be afraid to share with others what a power greater than you are has done in your life. Don't be afraid to tell them that you have faith not only in today, but in tomorrow, and why. Not trying to tell them they should believe the way that you believe. That's not what we're about. But realize that by being given the gift of this inner knowing, it is now our sacred responsibility to practice and share it with those who are willing to hear and experience, so that we can uplift one another. Martin Buber, the great philosopher, he said, God is probably the word that makes people more furious than any other word, because it's the one that's most misunderstood. Everyone has a different definition of God. And some people say, for that very reason, that word should be out. We should get rid of that word, God. But Buber would continue that for him, that very reason, for the very same reason, makes that word God the most indispensable and most important. You don't have to call it God. You can call it love. You can call it spirit. You can call it all sorts of names, but know what it is to you, and don't be afraid to express it. Our own founder, Ernest Holmes, was most fond of calling it life. God is life itself. He would say, God has been called by 1,000 names, but you and I, in the discussions which follow, are to think of God as life. Let us use the word life to symbolize everything God means to us. Just the simple word life. Let us then see if we cannot discover what life means to us, and just let it operate through us. Let us discuss who and what the self really is. Boredom in our lives, depression that is more psychological versus physical, mediocrity, blahness. These are not qualities of life. These are qualities of a defective experience. It is up to us to cultivate and realize the miracle that is each day, the miracle that is our connections and relationships, the miracles that are our goals and aspirations, the miracle that is you, that is God in you. If we can live from that knowing, no matter how small, teeny tiny it may seem today, we can unleash this consciousness of divinity and miraculousness in every area of our lives. And so today I'm inviting us to recommit our spirit. Recommit your spirit to God. Recommit your spirit to capital L, life. Recommit your spirit to who you came here to be. And we can do that through 3 simple ways. The first, God, I recommit my spirit by committing to strengthening my relationship with you. We do this by making time for God. When I want to take a vacation in my life, what I've realized, as well as spending time with people I love, is what I really want is an experience of God. It's not so much about getting away. It's about coming back to the realization that there's a divine power in my life. And so I encourage you to make time for God every day. Whether it's an hour walk in nature or a 15-minute meditation, every day give yourself that mini vacation to return to what is most sacred to you. Writing in your journal, having a conversation that's real with people that you love and care about. Praying for people you love, yourself, your country, and so on. Make time for God every day. And you see, it's not like a phone call with a relative on the other side of the country. Yeah, I'm doing fine. How are you? Okay, hang up and go about your day. When you engage in making time for God, it's the beginning of creating a rapport that will last throughout your whole day, your whole life. Open the circuits that allow that divine conversation to take place throughout your whole life. And that leads me to the second point, which is to listen for God. Make time for God every day and listen for God in your life. Frederick Buechner pointed out that walk from the garage to the trash barrel that you may have taken thousands of times before can become an opportunity for the divine to speak to you, to listen for that divine voice in the mundane, especially in the mundane, and in the fantastic. And lastly, grow with God. It may sound weird to say that God grows, but I don't put it past God. I believe that as we grow, God grows. As we evolve, God evolves. I think that's why we are here. We evolve one another. Yes, God is changeless, but God is ever expanding. Yes, God is fixed in its perfection, in its wholeness, and yet it is fluid. And each of us, by committing to that divine relationship, we can grow together and we can help bring healing to others and to the consciousness of humanity. Each week we're going to close with our prayers from this Adventures in Faith. And we're going to put this week's prayer on the screen. And take a picture of you if you want, or sign up for our Daily Pearl because it will be there every day. It's something we as community can affirm together. And so as we go into prayer today, let's begin with this. How wonderful it is to know that I am surrounded by the infinite intelligence and love that is God. I allow every part of my being and every aspect of my life to be embraced by this divine truth. For I absolutely know with certainty that because God is, I am. I am perfect, whole, and complete. I am safe, I am protected, and I am loved right now, right where I am. I accept this as the truth, and I recognize that when I am grounded in this awareness, I invite a deeper experience to unfold as my life. I turn from any condition that does not support the highest vision for my life, and I accept with great anticipation and clarity all of the good that is flowing to and through me. Thank you, God, for your wisdom, your mercy, and your grace. I give thanks for all that you have done and for all that is yet to come. And so I invite you to join me, if you so choose, in saying with me, I recommit my spirit. I recommit to the divine miracle that helps me to see, that helps me to know, that helps me to feel. I recommit to being with God so that I might know that much further that God is with me. Knowing that I commit to knowing that there is a divine power that can do and accomplish anything. I don't get out of its way. I become a part of its way. And I am willing to support this divine presence and bringing the love, the peace, and the glory that we know that we're here for. Not just to wish for or to hope for, but to manifest and demonstrate in every aspect of our lives. And so it is.
Thank you for listening to the Mile High Church podcast. This podcast is made possible by the generous contributions from listeners like you. If you'd like to make a donation, please visit us at milehighchurch.org. Have a fabulous day.